pushed with Given set to follow, what does a Donaldson leadership mean for Stormont and for the DUP? What does this mean for Northern Ireland? What about the protocol? What about education? What about COVID? Here tonight we talk to some young people as well as the guys from BeyondNI to talk about the possibility of an early election, the Northern Ireland protocol and education here on the Youth Voice. And we're joined by the guys from BeyondNI here, Matt and James. So welcome back to the show. So obviously new series is, you're the first guests on it. But I suppose what I want to ask about is, it seems like Jeffrey Donaldson seems to be the de facto leader already. So what are your thoughts on that? What is Jeffrey actually going to be like as leader?
James, do you want to go for this one first? I'll let you.
Yeah. No, I think Jeffrey's it was the correct choice a month ago, and it's the correct choice now for the DUP leadership. I think what the real anger with Poots was he ran on this idea that he's the man that he's going to consult with members, he's going to consult with the party. And when you look at his very, very short tenure as a leader of the DUP, he started off, he was taking his time, he was talking to MLAs about who was going to get what positions. And, that seemed to be working well for him. Everybody got the positions that I think they really wanted. There was some good shake-ups within the committee team there. And then obviously Junior Minister went to Gary Middleton in the executive office, who was an Arlene supporter. So I think he was trying to merge the gap that way. And he did quite well there. I think, though, when it came to his oustings, he didn't consult with the party. He just said, look, this is the deal we've got. Might I add, it was the one they agreed to back in 2020 for these Irish language rights. And I also want to put in the caveat there that this is Irish language and Ulster Scots rights. This is a cultural package, not specifically Irish language. And I think the media gets lost in that, which is a bit shameful on the reporting side, I might add. But look, he didn't consult with his MLAs when it came to that. They were all annoyed that this deal was going through, which is surprising. He's out because he didn't consult. Paul Given, by the end of this week, looking like he's going to be out as well. For Jeffrey, though, people say he's a moderate. I would disagree. I think he is roughly about the same as Poots, bar his presentation, which I think is what a lot of the media is saying. The big difference is Matt is going to jump in here and disagree with me on this. But I just want to finish on the point when it comes to the Irish language. Donaldson from the start has been against it. Poots at least has been willing and able to compromise. He made that compromise in New Decade, New Approach. We've also seen him in the past talking Irish to Irish rights activists down south. And look, pushing through this deal last Thursday shows that I think he was more moderate than maybe people let on. Still to the right of the party, don't get me wrong, but I don't think the differences between him and Donaldson are as extreme as extreme as people make it out to be. Matt, if you want to jump in and destroy my argument, go ahead.
Gladly. No, I mean, it's kind of difficult right now because I do disagree that Poots and Donaldson have similarities in kind of the minutiae of their politics, but I think that Jeffrey Donaldson is actually in now a difficult position. I think he would have had an easier time of it if he got in the first time. Now I think he has to deal with the kind of still remaining split in the party, and he also has to deal with the fact that it has become quite clear that you can't agree to the Irish Language Act without some level of DUP fury. I think he might still be able to, if he did it, I think there's possibility of his kind of side of the party still supporting him, maybe the extreme side of the party still being annoyed, but at least only half the party's annoyed at him at that stage, maybe. Or whether he does just go full on DUP and just say, I'm not doing it at all. It's really hard to tell what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks with this. I think Donaldson is very much locked into a situation where he does not actually get to make a lot of choices right now. in terms of what he's doing going forward. I think he has to be going with the flow as opposed to setting a path for himself. He has to just figure out what is the way that's going to make the most people in the DUP happy from this point going forward. I don't think he has to care about, Stormont collapsing at this stage in terms of his internal party support, which is disappointing. But I think he probably wants to come out as strong unionist vibe, strong, keep the union together, don't give concessions to the other side. So I think that the idea that unfortunately he was going to come in and be slightly more moderate than Poots is gone, even though I think he could have been at one stage. I find it hard to believe, or I find it hard to see the way he takes going forward and kind of being more moderate. Unfortunately, I think there was a time possibly where that could have happened. So now me and James are maybe slightly more kind of in line in our arguments. But it's such like it's all happened so quick. It's all happened so chaotically. Things just went off the boil, and I think it's hard to see now what direction Donaldson's going to go with all the kind of interplay of the party division, the party's internal division in between like the moderates and the extremists. How are you going to deal with the Irish Language Act? How are you going to deal with the NI protocol? How are you going to kind of take all these things forward without also getting ousted, as soon as you get into the job? Yeah, I don't know how we're going to see that happen going forward.
It also seemed like initially, during the contest that he was, I suppose, continuity Arlene. I think somebody described him as, whenever he really was. He was kind of Arlene's man over in Westminster, But now it seems that he is really coming out with a hard, almost Paisley, Dr. Paisley kind of rhetoric of, we'll pull down Stormont, really. Johnson will walk out, I suppose, even before he walks into Stormont as First Minister. So is it a case of, do you think we are going to see Stormont collapse at this point?
I mean, it's one of those ones where is this kind of the big talk before having to go into a negotiation, or is this an actual commitment to basically saying we don't care, we'll let Stormont go down in flames again? I almost think, if I'm thinking from a strategic point of view, and I'm being really cynical, I'm thinking as in Donaldson's shoes, I'm thinking, yeah, let it collapse, and then let the English, not the English, the UK government, Westminster, pull through the legislation. Let them do it so we don't have to do it, and then we just blame the English and say, look, the English have dobbed us out again. You need to support us, because we're the ones who said this shouldn't happen, even though they've only collapsed Stormont because they know what's going to happen in London. And it's been confirmed now that if it doesn't happen here, it's going to happen in London. So they can almost be content in the knowledge that they can be hardline, they can stay out of it, they can let this thing collapse. It happens in London. Then they get to come back. They get to probably do another wee negotiation where they get to all come together and say, yeah, let's do this. Let's get back to Stormont. Let's get back to doing a wee bit of devolved government. And then, am I just being too cynical, James, do you think?
No, probably a wee bit cynical for my taste, but that wouldn't be the start of our relationship. Look, I've seen with Donaldson say that he's going to collapse Stormont unless changes are going to be made to the protocol. And I think there are legitimate concerns within the unionist community about how the protocol is being carried out at the moment. But who's Donaldson arguing with here? The English government, UK government, sorry, the EU, the Irish government. Like, who's he mad at? It was let's be real here. It was the DUP who helped negotiate that deal. They were in power with the Tory party for a while to help shape this deal, and they did nothing. Every step they have taken has been a political misstep. And the shocking thing here is that the DUP are filled with some incredible policy people in the top ranks within their SPAD positions. For this to happen again and again and again, I think this party needs to have a serious rethink on how it conducts itself and what shape it's going to go in. And I don't know with Donaldson if you're going to see such a change compared to Arling. Like, I can't say to Poots because we didn't even really get to see what he would have done. In a lot of ways, you could say Poots is a martyr for this, helping agree the Irish Language Act to get through. devolved government. That's if we see it get through devolved government, but at least agreeing that it should come through. But then again, it was agreed a new decade, new approach. So I don't know if the DUP, I don't know their strategy here. It makes no logical sense to me. And Donaldson's going to collapse the assembly for what? To argue with who? I don't think they will, though. I really don't. I don't think it serves anybody's interests. But then again, as I said, the DUP don't always make logical decisions.
No.
And are we going to like? There's now talks that Given's gone. It appears that Given is, he's getting the boot as soon as the new leader comes in. But are the DUP really safe to kind of pull Donaldson out of Westminster? I know he says he wants to come over and be First Minister, which I suppose is another thing for him. But is he not throwing away a position? He's a Privy Councillor. He's a top dog over in Westminster, and he's in a risky constituency. Like at one point was a firm, great unionist stronghold. Is now, you've got Saoirse Eastwood really coming up, on the side, ready to take him out of it. So are they in that position where they can actually afford to possibly, co-opt in somewhere like in Arlene Foster's seat or something like that and risk that Lagan Valley seat?
I think I know word this. With Jeffrey and Lagan Valley, it's for as long as I've been alive, he has been the MP. He's one of the longest serving MPs within the UK. And I think within his constituency, he has a lot of respect from his constituents. And it's very common talk around Lagan Valley that if you want something done, you go to Jeffrey Donaldson. So in terms of a political figure for delivering to his constituents, the man is untouchable in a lot of ways. I know we're talking about the Saoirse Eastwood rise, which coincides with the Alliance surge in general across Northern Ireland. And in fairness, she's done very well. She's only still a councillor, and it's only going to be another year to the Assembly election. Her profile's rising quick, but we have to remember there was a 6,500 vote difference in that 2019 general election. For the DUP, I think they've been hinting at possibly talks of a pact with the Ulster Unionist Party. Donaldson was quite clear to say he would like to work closely with them. Now, he's a former UUP man himself. Also, he worked alongside Enoch Powell, so that shows you how much times have changed. I think he was... Oh, sorry, go on, Matt.
Sorry, I think whenever you're looking at the kind of competitors in that area, I think for one thing, alliances kind of, as you say, Saoirse Eastwood kind of rise, and the alliance rise in general is still like a little bit theoretical. I think it's yet to be seen, like the actual election success being a firm kind of guarantee. I think at a personal level, I somewhat hope that does happen because it just means it's kind of more competitive, and I think that's more interesting, and I think it's more beneficial for people in Lagan Valley. But then I also think that I don't think the UP still have any chance realistically in between. I don't think they have a great candidate to run in the unless James has someone who he knows who's
a good
the UP. Yeah, I don't know if they have a great candidate in Lagan Valley realistically to run.
Well, it would be Robbie Butler. It would be Robbie Butler who would be running
for MP.
He would definitely be running. He finished third in the last general election.
Okay,
with a few thousand votes less than Saoirse. It would be also a really good test for the UUP, this by-election, if this theoretical by-election, might I add. Obviously, we've seen the BD bounce, as commentators are calling it, which I quite like the name of. The alliteration pleases me. But it would be interesting.
Suzanne Breen pioneered the BD bounce, and you pioneered the sausage wars.
we were ahead of the game. That's what I'm saying. Like,
no, I do quite like stealing Suzanne Breen sounds. I think she's a writer. But no, look, I think it's a good opportunity for the UUP as well to maybe test the waters of their new found public persona and this more moderate liberal unionism that they're pushing. Doug Beattie was very clear today to push out the idea of a pact in Lagan Valley, which is great to see. Steve Aiken, he started his leadership the same way, but then obviously didn't commit to it. So if Doug commits to this, no pact, I think it's a good change in tone for the UUP in Lagan Valley. I still personally think the DUP will win that seat. I really do.
Yeah.
But look, I'm happy to be proven wrong.
I think one of the reasons they are going to win that seat probably realistically is it's going to be the DUP and the UP, or it's going to be the UP and Alliance probably fighting over votes amongst each other. I don't know how much either of those parties can realistically win votes off DUP kind of voters in the area. I could be wrong. Maybe there is such a big change in sentiment in the area, but I think generally it's going to be who between the UP and Alliance are able to actually win votes off of each other, and if one can come out really damaging the other party, maybe there's a chance. Yeah, but it's hard to say otherwise.
On a personal level, I know quite a few non-DUP voters who vote Jeffrey Donaldson when it comes to Westminster elections. So look, we'll see how it goes. Obviously, yeah.
And I suppose one final thing I want to ask you is the protocol. I know everyone just loves talking about the protocol and Brexit, but what can this mean? Like, there's a lot of talk about how I suppose it was something Hoots really pushed was this 2024 or no 2020 2024 majority. But even then, that only gets rid of Articles 5 through 10. But is the protocol really, like, it seems like the protocol's here to stay? Like, can Jeffrey really make much change, or is he just kind of posturing for votes, do you think?
I think it's mostly at this stage posturalist. I don't know how. I don't really see where they get the power to really make any change and the kind of negotiations of it. I think the best thing I can hope for is a more effective NI protocol, a protocol that lessens the difficulty of trade between the two areas to a point where it feels like it's not really even a substantial barrier. I think the continued use of border, the word border has been a little bit cynical from the media. I think it's been a little bit ramped up, and they kind of contributed to the kind of hysteria around it in some corners. Whenever I think it could just be made more efficient. It could be made to a point where it doesn't realistically matter. That there's a couple more papers that need to be signed going in between these two areas. Maybe there's it takes a little bit longer to move stuff from one place to another, but it's not ridiculous. It's not like an actual real trade. It's not like an actual real border. It's more of a slight inconvenience of trade that we just have to get over. I don't see how the DUP are going to realistically change things. It's going to be Boris. I mean, Boris Johnson has been kind of pushing a unionist idea. I think he has to deal with the fact that some members of the Tory party, I think some people actually are probably part of his supporter base in the Tory party, are very unionist and do kind of still retain some idea of it being a horrible defeat if they lose any part of the union. It's not like there still is a decent part of that party that still cares about being seen as a union that's together. They don't want to see Scotland leave. They don't want to see Northern Ireland leave. And the Prime Minister who does see that happen would be seen as a bit of a fool. But yeah, James, what do you think about the DP's chances of making change?
Like the majority doesn't matter when it comes to the NI Assembly. It's just good election talk, really. In terms of actual change, very, very, very small. I think the more interesting argument is them trying to make friends abroad. One of the core failures of unionism since '98 has not been its ability to not go to international areas and really make true, lasting friendships and having just good diplomatic skills. Look at Washington, no friends there, especially with the Joe Biden administration. The Tory government, they've shot themselves in the foot God knows how many times over the last number of years. Europe, no friends there as well. It's no surprise to me that unionism is stuck in this deal with a protocol they're deeply unhappy with, because they were not friends of any of the key political actors involved with it.
If I was Israel.
Just because they fly flags in the Shankill doesn't mean it's a true union that way. But I'll move on. Look, protocol, it's here to stay. Can it be reworked to be better? Yes, of course, and I truly believe that there is some flaws within it. Any trade that becomes more difficult to do between a country that is the United Kingdom from one part to another, I can truly understand why to so many people that is unacceptable. I just want to say, though, that the rhetoric and this almost mild call for arms within some communities here is deeply discouraging on a political level. I think we all need to be very careful on the language and the wording we use. And I think Matt quite rightly said, like, calling it a border is a bit strong for my tastes. But yeah, look, unionism needs to reach out more, needs to be more coherent with its messaging, and actually just make some friends.
Absolutely. And I suppose that is all from you guys. Thank you so much for joining. Up next, we've got an interview with Cormac Savage and Clara McDevitt. We're going to talk to them about the whole devolution situation, their thoughts on the DUP situation, and what this could all mean for education. Thank you, and we'll see you all in that interview. And we're back with Clara McDevitt, Cormac Savage, and Sophia Armstrong. I want to talk to them about what this whole situation means for education, what this means for young people. So first of all, I want to talk to Clara and Sophia. What do you want to see from the new Minister McIlveen? Because obviously we've seen quite a shake-up with the ministers. You know, what do you want to see from the minister? What do you want for young people? And what do you want for students?
For me in particular, I want to see Minister McIlveen endorse the Secondary Students' Union of Northern Ireland, particularly the Student Councils that Work report and the model student council that is comprised within it. It's a very effective model and it needs to be taken on by the minister.
And what about you, Clara? Anything you want to see from the minister?
I mean, I would quite like to see Minister McIlveen focus her attention on bringing back the oral exams that have been cut from next year's exams. I'd also like to see her, try and equalise the student and teacher unions. The fact that teacher unions get more, attention and rights than student unions when it is in fact for students.
Absolutely. And I suppose that whole student voice is so important. So I think, the minister definitely, I suppose I said that as someone that leads a podcast called Youth Voice, but I know we definitely do need to see more support from the minister to bring student voice, and I hate to say it, but youth voice to the forefront of NI politics. But Cormac, I want to bring you in here as well. I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts on the whole devolution situation? It seems like there's a possibility of executive collapse. Are you worried by the situation?
Well, an executive collapse is always going to be worrying, Dermot. I mean, especially at the minute where we're moving out of COVID restrictions and we legally need an executive to change the COVID rules and an assembly to debate and implement those. So it's possibly worst timing possible for the executive to be in the position that it's in right now. And I mean, what the situation that we're in is Jeffrey Donaldson, who seems like he'll likely be the new DUP leader, has made his position very clear, which is protocol equals no executive. And that's not good for us because, again, as I've said, we need an executive. And because the protocol isn't something the UK government can, or Boris Johnson can remove with the flick of a pen. It's a binding international agreement, and short of triggering Article 16, which I'm not sure there'd be the grounds to do, we are stuck with the protocol. And I think that it's become a sort of focus point for political unionism now, and it's going to remain like that for the foreseeable. And that's probably the most concerning thing, that we have a focus point for political unionism, which is the removal of this protocol, and their focus point is actually unachievable. So we might see devolution sacrificed for an aim that isn't actually achievable.
And I suppose if you have a message, I suppose just as much for Sinn Féin and the DUP as the DUP, but if you could, if you could speak to the leaders or whoever the leader of the DUP might be, we're presuming Donaldson because he's the only one so far that's put his candidacy in, but God knows what can happen. It is NI politics after all. But what, if you can speak to them, if there was something you could say, whenever it comes to executive collapse, what are your concerns? What do you want them to do?
Well, my key point is, when I think about the collapse day of the executive, is if we collapse the executive again, I'm not convinced it'll come back. And if history teaches us anything, Northern Ireland has had its greatest period of peace when we've governed together, when we've shared government and we've shared responsibility. And the last thing we need is to hand power back to unelected bureaucrats in Westminster, which, of course, the irony is this is all over Brexit. And the DUP campaigned for Brexit to take power out of the hands of unelected bureaucrats in Brussels. And if they follow through with their plan to collapse the executive over the protocol, they will hand power to unelected bureaucrats in Westminster and in the NIO. And that is as equally undemocratic as what they would have claimed was undemocratic in the EU. So I think that the one thing that the two leaders, and indeed all political leaders, need to keep in mind at the minute is we are sort of at a crossroads. And I know that phrase has been used so much recently right now, where we are about to politically choose our future. And we could be about to flush devolution for good. And that can't and shouldn't be the decision we make, because devolution, in my opinion, has been what's kept our peace alive for the last 30 years.
Absolutely. And I suppose that is so worrying. I know for young people, we are, I suppose, the future generation, I suppose, and it must be worrying for everyone. And I just hope that no matter what happens, we are, whether it's an election now, in a week's time, in a month's time, or in a year's time, that we do see devolution. But I think we're going to leave it there. I know we've had a very different show this week. It's a new series. We're trying everything out. Everything's different. There's technical difficulties and, all of this different stuff. So do bear with us as we're doing it. But I want to thank Cormac, Clara and Sophia. Thank you all for coming on. To everyone listening, thank you for listening. I've been your host, Dermot Hamill. You can read our blog, www.youthvoiceni.com. Catch us on Twitter at YouthVoiceNI, or catch us on Instagram at YouthVoice_NI. As always, I've been your host, Dermot. As I said before, and we'll see you all next time. Thank you for listening.